sorry, you were trying to say something?
I did, John. We can continue the dialogue. I was just saying the drug launderers, the drug money launderers. That's Wells Fargo. They were caught.
Right.
If you're not aware, Wachovia and Wells Fargo were caught laundering $379 billion worth of Sinaloa and other drug money, and were slapped on the wrist with a $160 million fine. Just for those that they don't. This is We Are Change, where all the news nobody talks about is talked about. So people don't mention it. They reported it, but nobody's in the government's going after Wells Fargo. Why?
Right. And I would recommend a really good video for everyone to watch out there. It's called Cocaine Cowboys.
Cocaine
I don't know if you've
Cowboys.
seen it or not. Yeah, it goes through the whole cartel. It shows sort of like, it shows how even the vain efforts the government tried to do on the drug war were totally off base, and it starts from this one guy and goes all the way up and shows you how that they had assistance like nationwide, worldwide. The guy said he went to dinner with Bill Clinton, and when they finally raided him, they were like surprised he was the guy that was the kingpin or the main guy on it, because he was giving money to both parties, and the government's always been all these other like war on drugs and everything. They've always been out in right field, and in the actual drug trafficking and everything else been in left field. So you can either believe it's done in effort to help, or just that in willful ignorance. But either way,
No, John, please. It's complicity. You don't understand. Mena, Arkansas, and Barry Seal bringing the cocaine into Mena, Arkansas under the governorship of Bill Clinton, with all those women, all the cocaine that was flowing, and his brother snorting up stuff and shooting his mouth off about how Bill's got a nose like a vacuum cleaner. There was more cocaine, and then you get involved with the. It gets even deeper, because then there's Kathy O'Brien, who was an MK Ultra like sex slave, like mind controlled sex slave, that actually serviced Bill and Hillary when they were in the governor's mansion, and Bill went with a guy, and she serviced Hillary. So it's like there's just so much stuff that the people aren't aware of that really did happen on record. And going in this direction is not where I wanted to go, but what you were saying was true. The drug war, okay, it's a farce, just like all these other things. The CIA brings the drugs in. That's who was bringing it in. They crash. You can Google it. Many times CIA planes crash with tons and tons of cocaine on them. They're just caught constantly. Just recently with Fast and Furious. This isn't nothing new. This is the elite are running this operation, and they're condoning these efforts, and they're killing their competition just like they do with legitimate legal businesses. And right now they're tightening their grip on all of this control grid, because you have it all being put into place. You're scratching the surface on some great stuff, like, for example, talking about FDR. Now, you got to understand that FDR did set this up for this purpose. The globalists have set this, from the Federal Reserve, the whole purpose was to bankrupt and to literally steal the wealth of the nation.
See, the problem is people focus in on FDR. Now, FDR himself, you got to realize if you study FDR...
He's just another one that moved the agenda along, John. He's just another one that moved it along, just like Bush moved it along. Look, Clinton moved it to Bush, Bush moved it on.
Yeah, he had, in a lot of ways, he had good intentions and he wanted to actually help people. But if you look at his background and his education, he only got C marks in Harvard when he went, and he was private school the rest of the time. He was really out of contact with most normal people, and I think he did really want to help. But the thing is, he didn't have the sophistication to know the intricacies of what was going on with banking and finance, because he originally didn't want to go down this Keynesian path, because he was told that wasn't right, because he had basic economic understanding, and then he was sold on the idea because all the people around him at that time were pushing this agenda, and so he said, well, we'll try this, basically.
But he comes from a banking family. He comes from a banking family. I think really what it is there is this, like, it's from Wilson on and considering on, it was this the movement towards this world government, And all of the directions have been there, especially since the end. Now, Roosevelt certainly did things that pissed the elite off, just like his cousin Roosevelt did. They pissed off the elite a lot because they were blue bloods. But they really did, you know, play exactly into their hands, because what we now have is this socialized government, socialism, fines against, you know, if you don't have insurance, you're going to get a fine. And, I mean, you're working towards this, you know, totally fascist swip, you know.
That's the intricacy of the system, is that, you know, even if you're president of the country, you can be running it, and I mean, like, I think there's been people who are, you know, less of character than other presidents. It varies from on a scale, but I think even if you are a good intentioned person, the way the system works is that you don't see what's going on. Just like when a person goes to the Walmart and buys a bunch of cheap products, they don't see that it came from slave labor over in China. They're not consciously thinking of that when they do that. Much as most of our, you know, not just the president, but even our local politicians, they're so removed from the system, you know, because the lobbyists and all the people providing the money and the financing want them removed from the system, because, you know, if enough people, you know, if enough of them even open their eyes to it and saw what was going on, then they would realize no one would be able to carry out their plans, you know?
Yes, but you see, what happened is over these years, like what they did, this collectivism is achieved by putting these puppets in place that get the agenda moving. And what I mean by puppets is, it's not like saying you're a puppet president. They're put into place, and they have these people that are their advisors and the people that are moving along these different agendas, for lack of a better word. And the presidents are basically put into positions that they're in because they're going along with these agendas. Then you have somebody like Kennedy, who, once he became president, realized that there was a lot of stuff that he didn't like. He figured he's president and he's going to change these things, certain things. And then you find out that you can't change things.
Yeah, that's what I'm really trying to hit on there. Is just like for instance, in the breakup of the Soviet Union, when you know, the Soviet Union, they had these autonomous states, but they were, you know, everything was, you know, Stalin basically put in all these governments, and when they tried to deviate, there goes, you know, I forget which one it was, the Roman, I forget who it was, not Yugoslavia, but Czechoslovakia, Kubitschek. You know, when anyone tries to go against that, then you get assassinated or kicked out of office or any of those things. But the takeaway from that with the Soviet Union was that they did eventually have some change, but it came from the people themselves. It didn't come through the actual government entity. And that can happen again. Of course, you know, you have a populist movement, but most of the populist movements tend to get hijacked. I mean, like, you look at the Wall Street movement, things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have to, I think education is probably the key to solving this problem.
Well, education, but like not this dumbed down education that they give.
No, I'm talking about. I'm talking about, like, for instance, if we look at the Renaissance. Mm-hmm. You know, when we say why was the Renaissance so good, it's because people had knowledge of all areas, as well as they had specialized knowledge of various things. So you know where your food's coming from. You know how electricity works. You know the history of things. And you know, as a history scholar myself, I mean, that's one of the main things you do, is sit there and debate history of this historian says this and that other historian says that, and why did they say that? What are their motivations? You know, I mean, that's the real interesting story, even more than the history itself. You know.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the truth is that, you know, history is so vast, and again, I'm a student of history myself, and but a lot of it, again, you have to go back to, like, the reasons for wars and things that we are taught in schools, and the way that they see the curriculum is so controlled as well. Like, they're not going to tell you that, like, for example, the Rothschild banks funded the Bolshevik Revolution, and funded the Bolsheviks to take over the country and kill the Tsar. They don't tell you that the money came there, and it's all on record. You can read a book by Anthony Sutton called the Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution, written I think 30 years ago or something like that, 20 years ago. So I mean, it's there. It's just nobody talks about it. That there's this connection.
Here's my main point. Sorry to get off topic.
No, it's all right. It's the banks. My point is, it's the banks. It's the banks are the problem. They're the ones that crush the governments. They're the ones that crush the economies.
But in order for people to understand that, here's the key to all that. When I say education, education that brings forth critical thinking. I think if every person in America woke up every day and at the end of the day said, am I critically thinking about the information that's being sent into me?
Mm-hmm.
You know, am I listening to that, or is it just this hypnotic flow of information?
John, everybody's sleeping, man. You're somebody that's awake and aware, and what you would call exactly what you called yourself, a Renaissance man. I'm sure you listen to different types of music. You know great painters, like I like Goethe. I like you know, Edward Munch. You know, and I get into you know whatever humanities, history. You know, artistic works, Louis Buñuel, other things like that, films, you know, famous things, you know, Jean Renoir, if you're not just these American filmmakers, people that actually had some substance in their work. Of course, we seek knowledge because we wish to. That's the problem. We've been dumbed down as a society to just, you know, this, like, it's bubble gum. Everything is like, you know, entertainment. It's like, you know, it's something that's got to enter. If the movie has anything that's, you got to think too much, you don't want to watch it. Same thing with they only give you 30-second commercials because that's all the mind really is going to listen to. And then you have all of this other bullshit with American Idol and Dancing with the Stars and all this stuff and people and football and drinking beer and popcorn. That, you know, it's so pushed. It doesn't say, everybody, seek knowledge. Wake up every day. You know what I'm saying? Of course not. Because they don't want you to. It's like we're being enslaved. They want the slaves to embrace their servitude, like Aldous Huxley said. You actually become like, you actually love your servitude because you love what you're doing, not realizing you're a slave.
Right, and I think it was Alan Watts or one of those guys that
Alan Watts.
He was talking about England when they brought they gave everyone television that were supplemented by you know, the government. Before that, people would gather in the common areas, and they would debate politics and all sorts of you know, politics, religion, you know, just what people are doing, you know, actual conversations with everyone in the community, and everyone knew each other. And then he said, right, you know, the week after the government had distributed all the televisions back in the 40s or 50s or whatever it was, then instantly you saw no one in the common areas anymore. And that's exactly what we're doing is you know, we have to, one action point I'm taking is that, you know, at least one night a week, you know, me and my wife will not be actively using internet or watching television or all those things, and just read a book or play a game or just, you know, have a conversation. And it's hard to do at first, actually, you'll find, but over time you'll realize it makes your life more rich and enjoyable. And so I got to go right now. I'm going to leave you with the last point that I think, you know, critical thinking, and also take a look at the part of Indendum talks about the money, the whole how money works and how it's made. Critical thinking, and just I think if people get back to the actual interactions we can control with one person to another, we'll see that we'll break that hypnotic control that society has over us. So I appreciate you letting me talk all this time.
Oh, of course, John.
Be on the air here, so.
It's great. You know, John, I'll just one thing that I'll close with you here is we here in Connecticut, I'm broadcasting from Connecticut, we had power outage for a big week, long week and a half. So it was very interesting how, you know, when you don't have internet and television, how people, you're right, people don't know what to do with themselves. It's sort of frightening. But we managed through it, lost power for a few days. But it is true, people aren't prepared for something like that happening on a mass scale either. And Barry Seal bringing the cocaine into Mena, Arkansas under the governorship of Bill Clinton with all those women, all the cocaine that was flowing, and his brother snorting up stuff and shooting his mouth off about how Bill's got a nose like a vacuum cleaner. There was more cocaine, and then you get in town. Then you get involved with the. It gets even deeper because then there's Kathy O'Brien, who was an MK Ultra like sex slave, like mind controlled sex slave, that actually serviced Bill and Hillary. So people don't mention it. They reported it, but nobody's in the government's going after Wells Fargo. Why?
Right. And I would recommend a really good video for everyone to watch out there. It's called Cocaine Cowboys.
Cocaine Cowboys.
If you've seen it or not. Yeah, it goes through the whole cartel. It shows sort of like, it shows how even the vain efforts the government tried to do on the drug war were totally off base. And it starts from this one guy and goes all the way up and shows you how that they had assistance like nationwide, worldwide. You're trying to say something?
I did, John. I'll put we can continue the dialogue. I was just saying the drug launderers, the drug money launderers. That's Wells Fargo. They were caught.
Right.
If you're not aware, Wachovia and Wells Fargo were caught laundering $379 billion worth of Sinaloa and other drug money, and were slapped on the wrist with a $160 million fine. Just for those that they don't, this is We Are Change, where all the news nobody talks about is talked about.
The guy said he went to dinner with Bill Clinton, and when they finally raided him, they were like surprised he was the guy that was the kingpin or the main guy on it, because he was giving money to both parties, and the government's always been all these other like war on drugs and everything. They've always been out in right field, and in the actual drug trafficking and everything else. Than in left field. So you can either believe it's done in effort to help, or just that in willful ignorance. But either way.
No, John, please. It's complicity. You don't understand. Mena, Arkansas, when they were in the governor's mansion, and Bill went with a guy, and she serviced Hillary. So it's like there's just so much stuff that the people aren't aware of that really did happen on record. And going in this direction is not where I wanted to go, but what you were saying was true. The drug war, okay, it's a farce, just like all these other things. The CIA brings the drugs in. That's who was bringing it in. They crash. You can Google it. Many times CIA planes crash with tons and tons